Had I stayed there, I would have been killed. There's no doubt in my mind. Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. I said, I'm going to end up a statistic. It's going to be a murder-suicide. I told my brother-in-law and sister-in-law that, and they're like, don't say that. And I'm like, oh no, it's true. That's what's going to happen if I don't, you know.
Hello, I'm Gretchen Baskerville, the author of The Life-Saving Divorce, Hope for People Leaving Destructive Relationships. I've been a Christian divorce recovery leader in churches since 1998, and today I'm interviewing Karen, an amazing woman of faith who stayed with her abusive husband more than 40 years before she finally left him and his murderous rages behind. What does it take to start a new life in your 60s? You'll hear her tell her story, from her loving upbringing and happily married parents to her marriage to a man who tormented and manipulated her with false accusations, suicide threats, stalking, road rage, and worse. Discover how her relationship with the Lord and a wonderful, wise pastor and counselor gave her strength to leave. Now let's jump into the interview. Today, I am welcoming my friend Karen, who is going to give us her story. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Gretchen. It's nice to actually talk with you like this and share my story.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you because I've really appreciated what I've seen from you on social media and your insights. So I'm going to start with you the same place I start with everyone, which is to ask you, when you were a young girl, what did you hope or dream of about marriage or expect from marriage?
Well, I think pretty much like every young girl, I expected to find a good man that was going to take good care of me, and we would be married happily forever.
Right, got it.
Yep.
And what was your parents' marriage like?
It was a very good marriage. They were very happy. There was 8 children in my family, and my parents were wonderful to us. They took great care of us. They were happy together. They were married 60 plus years before each of them had passed away. Mm. So we had a great example, great godly example.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a blessing. That's great.
It was. I was actually raised Catholic. And so, yes, it was, we attended church regularly. We, everything was, it was really good.
Now, tell me about your relationship with God during those young years and as you approached marriage.
I always had it sounds funny, growing up in a Catholic church, it's kind of more impersonal, I think, than like right now I'm with a non-denominational church. And, but from a young age, I had a very personal relationship with my Lord, and always had conversational prayer with him and stuff. So my faith was very good, growing up and going towards marriage. And I was hoping to find somebody, of that same caliber that would be right there with me.
And so how did you meet? And what did you think of him at first, and what attracted you?
We had gone to high school together, and he actually was a neighbor to my aunt, and I was at my aunt's quite often. He was in high school, and we never dated until after high school, after we graduated. He was just nice. I mean, he was cute, and he was nice. I had never dated anyone. And so, when he did ask me out, I was pretty flattered, because he was the first one I had gone out with.
So he was your first boyfriend?
He was my first and only. Yes.
Okay. So how long from the time you met, or at least, I mean, you knew each other from high school, but how long from the time you started dating to the time you started getting serious? And did you see any red flags or any problems during that time?
Well, in hindsight, yes, I can see things that we started dating right after graduation. And so we graduated in June. I was 19, he was 20. And by December, we had gotten engaged. And probably that first red flag should have been, he gave me my engagement ring at a red light at an intersection. And I guess at the time, I mean, I was naive. I was just, I guess it was just that I was flattered, And then we were married the following July.
Hindsight being 2020, what did that mean to you?
He didn't care enough to really um, make anything of it, anything nice of it. It was just like, here's your ring. It wasn't, it just wasn't very loving, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there was other issues with, like, now that I look back, where I had to call him every day, even if I was at work or at home, and now I'm thinking, well, at that time I was like, oh, he wants to talk to me every day. I was flattered, or he would come over every day. But in hindsight, he was just making sure where I was, basically. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of women, and probably some men too, see that attention as being flattering, when in reality it's checking up on you, monitoring you, and kind of, stalking you, trying to figure out where you are and who you're talking to. And yet so many of us, I mean, I did too, kind of fall for that, because the attention feels great. So then what happened?
Well, when I got pregnant with my first son, so I had him, and which was great. That was the best blessings of my marriage, was my two sons. So I had him, and it wasn't rough for me, but in that point, he worked in a coal mine at that time, but he was always going after work. He would either go drinking with his buddies, and he was his whole family, very big into hunting. Hunting tops everything in life. So that always came before us. So that was hard, so there was always that, I was left there all the time. So that went on. And then 4.5 years later, I had my second son. And even during that whole time period, we had moved, but it was still the same, basically. It was like, well, you knew this going into the marriage, that, I would be going hunting every day, and I would be doing this and that. And, I basically didn't do anything.
So you were expected to run the whole household while he was out either working or doing his
definitely.
hobby. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
When did you first realize something is really wrong here and this isn't right?
Well, probably, like I said, there was issues the whole time up to the, say, 10-year mark, where, he would even get into a rage, to one of my sons, and they were little, and I would literally step in the middle. He always had a foul temper, things like that. But I would say I pretty much overlooked everything till we hit about the 10-year mark. And that's when he really started going into these rages in my face over whatever. Well, it was always over. I was looking at guys. Every guy I saw, I wanted that guy. There was probably guys coming to the house. So around that 10-year mark, he had let me back up a little bit. He had sleep apnea and snored like a bear and stuff. And he went on a machine. So at that point, he's the one that left our bedroom and went to the bedroom downstairs because of the noise. Well, that's what I thought, it was like, well, I won't keep you awake, Now, there was a 10-year period that I worked from home. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I also babysat a few children. So that was kind of during that period. So now, again, in hindsight, he was going down there, but he was monitoring me. He put a baby monitor under the bed.
Oh, wow. And wait, he was monitoring you?
Yes.
While you were sleeping?
Yeah, or even in the room, because I guess he thought I was either going to be talking to somebody on the phone, or maybe somebody was coming in the window. I guess while he was home, I was going to have company come in the window or something.
Like men were going to come in.
Oh, yes, okay. Like men.
Wow. Okay.
So he had put the baby monitor under there, and I would hear him downstairs standing under the bedroom, which is not where the other bedroom is. And I just didn't know what he was doing. And I was like, I had no clue. Well, I was cleaning one day and dusting under the bed, and I'm following this wire, and I pull it out, and I'm like, what in the world? So I took it out and took it down to him, and he just went into this rage, like, well, what did you find there? Tell me, what did you find? And I'm going like, what is this? And so besides doing that, he was telling me that he was going to work an hour or two early. He would go up around, and he told me this out of his own mouth. He would go up around the block and park and come back and watch the house to see if anybody was coming in the house. Well, my kids were little to boot. They're in their bedrooms. And he still insisted that I was having men come in the house or I was talking to them or whatever. So that's the real starting point of the bad stuff.
Wow. Look, I mean, neither of us is a trained therapist or a counselor. And
Mm-hmm.
what do you think was going on in his life that made him just flip out and become so paranoid?
I have no idea. I mean, his dad was pretty much the same way with his mom. And so I don't know if it's just something, a learned thing, but I mean, he's had some mental health issues and stuff. But then again, a lot of people have mental health issues and they don't choose to abuse.
Right.
I know a lot of people that have mental health issues. They're not abusers. But no, his whole thing was, it was a paranoia. Every man that he could think of, then I was cheating with.
And what did he say when you said, "Honey, this is ridiculous. What am I going to do with two little children in the house and I'm working from home. I don't have time to cheat on you."
Oh, he would just tell me he didn't believe me.
Hmm.
He didn't believe me. He would just say that right out.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and no matter how much I tried to explain, he didn't believe it.
Wow. Okay. So, what started your thinking toward what was the next step? What was the next shoe to drop?
Well, oh my gosh, there was so many shoes over the years that I guess I chose to overlook, thinking he was going to change, or whatever. But it's probably about 10 years ago. So this is probably another maybe 20 years into the marriage, that like during this whole time period, everything that he would accuse me of and I would deny or I would try and prove, then he started constantly threatening suicide. Everything was like, if you don't tell me who you're cheating with, I'll do this. If you don't tell me this, if you don't do this, I'll kill myself. If you don't, he had a very bad porn addiction the whole time. Because I would come back, and at that point, we just had a really old desk computer. This was way back in the day, mind you. And, it'd be crashed all the time because he just like, if there was any button, he would ruin it. And so it would be crashed all the time. So it took a while, but one day I went in and a porn picture popped up, and I confronted him about it. And he was just like, oh, it just like popped up when I was looking for whatever, and I'm like, so I'm thinking, naive I am. Well, he was on, and it just, if you do plug in the wrong words, you're going to get something pop up. Like I said, at this one point, then he started doing all this suicidal stuff. Then one day, I don't even remember what he was raging about, and he went off, and he'd done this many times. He would just then run out the door for, an hour or two, whatever. Well, his brother and sister-in-law, I was very close with my sister-in-law, and I had confided somewhat in her, not in great detail, but she knew what was going on, and his brother. So I called them over, and they came over and talked with me, and they went out and looked for him. And he wasn't, when he did show up home, my brother-in-law's like, well, I'll talk to him, but I won't expose you. I'll just see what's going on. And so that was like a really big hurdle there. And then all the suicide things started 5 years ago, 6 years ago. He was still continuing all the accusations and and then the paranoia was getting worse. It would be, at that point, I had a flip phone, which had no internet, no nothing. It was just strictly a phone. I would take it and if we were somewhere, I would lay it by the bed, use it like as a clock, flip it open for a light to go to the bathroom or something. Well, I was always talking to a guy in the middle of the night on the phone, or, so it was always, that type of deal. And so we had gone up to his brother's in New York. And one morning, it was the first morning, full morning we were there. He got up and he flipped the light on and he was like, you had the phone by the bed. And I'm like, yeah. I saw you talking on it in the middle of the night. I said, no, I wasn't. It was just, and I got up and I picked up, it was on top of my clothing, and I picked up the whole pile to go into the bathroom to shower. And I came out of there and he just flipped out. Like, you were on talking with some guy, and if you want him more than me, then okay. And, you'd be better. I'm just going to kill myself. And he just went on and on and on. And then he left me there. He stranded me there. Mm-hmm. And so 6 hours, I'm 6 hours away from home. And then my son has to drive up to get me. So before my son came to get me, he went and took all the guns out of the house, so. But when I left,
took the guns, or your husband took the guns?
My son took all the guns.
Oh, good. Okay.
He took them all to his house. So when I did go home, I went to my sister's house for a week. And I told him, I am not coming home until you get help. Mm. And he's like, well, of course it was I don't need any help. I'm not doing anything wrong. It's all you. I just plain up told him, I'm not coming home until you get help. So I said to him, well, why don't you go? I knew he liked our family doctor, who we both went to. I said, why don't we call him? You can start there. You go there, because I wanted him to go to mental health. No, he didn't want anything to do with that. So we went to our PCP, and I went with him. And he started telling him, well, yeah, I have stress and I have anxiety, but I think she's cheating and this and this. I told him everything. I blurted out everything. I told him everything. And I told him how he was kept threatening suicide. So he immediately said, well, we have to do something about this, and took him over and they hospitalized him. I did get him to consent, but he signed it, but he's like, are you sure you want to do this? So, he did sign the paper to stay for a week. So I had told him, he was just screaming at me the whole way over, like, well, you didn't have to tell him all of our business. I said, yes, I did. Yeah. So he ended up in a mental health unit for a week. And we had both at that time worked for an organization with delinquent boys in a residential group homes. And so we both had trainings, a lot of trainings and mental health type trainings. And first thing he said to myself and my son when we got up to the hospital is, I'll tell them exactly what they want to hear, because I know what they want to hear. So that's what he did, basically. Wow. He just appeased them, told them they put him on meds, and he had to go to a psychiatrist. And we did visits there for a while. I went with him. And of course, he tried to reason everything out that he had ever done, that, none of it was wrong and that. And they diagnosed him with delusions and paranoia. Wow. And they put him on meds. Well, I knew immediately, because he kept saying, are you going to come home? And I said, I am, if you're going to stay with your appointments and you're going to stay with the meds. Well, I could tell that he was stopped taking the meds, because he started, into all his stuff again. And then he gave me all kind of reasons why he had stopped taking the meds. And this doctor had told him to stop taking them, this other doctor. And things just, you always think it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And instead, all these last years, things just got worse and worse and worse. The paranoia got worse. He was following me everywhere I went in the car. He told my son he was doing it. My brother saw him. He would call me everywhere I went to see if he would call like my sister's phone to see if I was there, call my brother's house to see if I was there. We'd see him drive by, and, so the things just got worse and worse. And the threats of physical violence started getting worse and worse also.
So what kinds of threats? Against you, or suicidal threats?
Oh, no, they were against me. And he would do, and like I said, really, until I read your book, and I've gone to a psychologist, and he was a wonderful help. I didn't see a lot of things that were done as physical abuse, but turns out they actually were. Like, he would threaten me in the car. I mean, he would lift his butt out of the seat and lean into me and scream in my face while he was driving. Road rage is a nice thing to say, what he had. He would lurch the car at cars that were going too slow for him. Oh, wow. But he would if we'd be driving, like say to my son, 6 hours away, and if it was pouring rain, this one instance, and I just said to him, could you slow down a little bit? Well, then he would speed up like twice as fast,
Oh, wow.
you know, or we would be going somewhere and he would get behind cars, they were going a little too slow for him. And I'd be like, it's fine. We don't have to be there at any certain time. Well, he would pass like 4 cars on a double yellow going 85 and a 40.
Wow.
And just, and I have bad night blindness. So he would know, especially if we were driving in the dark, he would just do the crazy things to scare me. Or we'd be driving and I'd be like, I need to stop to use a bathroom somewhere soon. And, it's already been a couple hours since we had stopped. And he would just scream at me, well, you should have gone, when I told you to go. And he would like deny me to even stop and go to the bathroom and things like that. Then it turned into, he would tell me, well, I was going to leave one way or the other. And then, but the very, very last straw was, well, he had started saying abusive things to my older son too, just a couple times, but enough that I was just like, and the last straw was like, he was in my face raging and I was giving him the, what do they call it? Gray rock? No reaction. And he hauled his fist back to punch me in the face, the I oughta. And then I just sat there. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. And then I was like, that's it. I'm done. That's it. I'm out.
That was the switch.
That was it.
Wow.
That was it.
Wow. How did he take that?
Well, I left October 17th. I went to the lawyer. Well, that was my separation date. I went, and we don't have like a legal separation or anything in Pennsylvania, but you file. So I was separated then. He knew, he would call and he would be like, well, when are you coming back? I'd be like, I'm not. Like, I'm just not. And then he would, of course, scream and holler at me and stuff and hang up. And then the one day he called and he was screaming at me. And then he finished up with, well, thanks for ruining my life.
Oh, wow.
And I immediately the next day called the attorney and I said, I want to file papers. So in January, I filed divorce papers. And I told him, I just basically told him, and I'm sure he was down. My sister lives not too far. And I'm sure he was probably down here. She has an alarm system on her house. So I reminded him of that. Her house is alarmed. I have no problem calling the police. I'm not doing this anymore. I will call the police, I'm sure he was down here in that. And he was, as far as the suicidal stuff, I don't know, because then I chose no more contact with him at all. Nothing.
Good for you. Was that hard to do, or you just...
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
That's what I told him. I said, there is no way in this earth I would ever go back to him. Ever.
Yeah. You just finally exhausted every second or third or 20th or 500th chance you had given him.
Yes. Oh, probably at least 1 million things that I overlooked and hope that, he would change. And he did change, but for the worse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So as a young wife, we all tell ourselves things, mainly things that we were told, either from our church or from our family or from society. We were all given these messages that we just had to hang in there. We had to try harder. We had to keep working.
Yeah.
What were the messages that you sort of got that kept you going through this was a 25 or 30-year marriage?
46 years.
46-year marriage. That's
a
long marriage. What were you telling yourself that made you walk back into that house day after day after day, knowing that you were going to face a raging, paranoid man?
That walk back in every day was tough after work. Let me tell you, I would round the corner and be like, oh, Lord, his car is here. It was that type of deal. But it was all my faith in God that took me through it all, sustained me through all of it. There's no other way that I survived that, but I mean, that was basically it. I just kept pressing. And like you said, you're raised to say, stick it out, try again. And that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, just how did you know that God was releasing you? That you didn't need to try any harder?
Um, well, I actually, probably the whole last year before I left, I was praying for some sort of exposure to somebody besides me. And that happened. It happened. He had, the last accusation was I was cheating with my pastor. I was the financial secretary at our church. So I had meetings with him. I said, yes, him and the elders. And then he would say all kind of insane things to me all the time. And he would say, well, his telephone has the same last four digits as ours. And that was his reasoning why I was cheating with him. I'm like, even if it does, like, I'd say to him, how does that mean anything? Like, what is that? That doesn't mean anything. Well, he had gotten into big rage over, somebody again that I had supposedly looked at. And our pastor lived like 5 minutes away from us. Well, he went down there in order to bash me and call me out. Wow. Well, he didn't know that I had already been counseling with him and his wife and the pastor's wife, who are good friends of mine. So I had already been counseling. And so they kind of knew what was going on. Wow. Well, he went down there and he started, trying to unload like it was me and this. So my pastor's wife called me and she said, he's down here sharing. Can you come down here? And I said, well, sure. So I went down and we were all sitting there and I could see that he was like right on that edge of a rage and I don't even remember what he said, but I knew that what I answered was going to just press that button, although it was just a very nice, calm, but I knew it was going to press that button. And he did, and it did. And everything came out, and he started telling the pastor, all these things, but trying to rationalize in the next breath why he did this. Okay, maybe I did this, but it was because, and this is what I did. Mm-hmm. And the pastor and his wife just sat there like with, they would look at me like, and look back, look at me and look back. And it was like, what is really going on here? And he finally said to him, because I said, well, did you tell them that you were going to punish? And he's like, well, I never hit you. And my pastor's like, pulling your arm back into her face is not appropriate. He said to me, I don't think you should go home. I think you need to go somewhere. Can you go to your sister's? They knew my sister. And I said, I have some places I can go, but I think it's going to make it worse right now. And he was like, oh, yeah, because if she goes there, I won't know where she is, and I won't know where she's going, and her sister's going to lie for her. And he just went on and on and on. So I went home that night, but I had already started a plan. And my pastor had called, and he said to both of us, well, before we left, he said, I have a Christian psychologist who I know really well, and I want you to see him. He said, we'll take you the first time. I said, I'm fine with that. So we went only a few days later, and the pastor and his wife, in the meantime, had spoken with the psychologist, told him everything they witnessed and everything they heard. And they stayed in with us for probably the first 10 minutes or so. We were together at the very beginning. We weren't even there 5 minutes. Well, he starts going off and trying to rationalize. And the psychologist looked at him and he said, I'm suggesting a 6-month separation. I mean, like instantly.